On this episode of Things That Matter, I interview my friend Nazareth, who is a Palestinian who oversees a ministry to refugees and who is also one of the funniest guys you'll meet. He's a professional comedian. So stay tuned. You're going to love it. Hi, and welcome to this episode of Things That Matter. I'm your host, Brian Brodersen, and it's great to be with you. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm really excited about the program today. My friend Nazareth Rizkallah is in the studio with me, and we're going to be talking about his life, which I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Nazareth, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. So I want to start with, well, I just want to mention right up front, you are a Palestinian.
Yes.
But I want to talk about just your early life. So why don't you just share with us, what it was like. You're born. You were born, right?
Yes, yes. It took a while, but I was delivered, physically delivered. Yeah, I was born to a Palestinian family in the Holy Land. My parents are from the Gaza Strip, and when I was 3 years old, my parents left the Gaza Strip, and we moved to Kuwait.
Right.
And that was interesting because we were a Greek Orthodox Christian family living in a Muslim country. And in Kuwait, if you're not a national, you're a second-class citizen automatically. Mm-hmm. So there was the difficulty of being a Christian, even though by name at the time.
Yeah.
To
culturally.
Culturally, right. And just going to school and finish high school in Kuwait, and I had several arguments and fights with some people because I wore a cross, even though I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah.
Why I'm wearing a cross, what does the cross means? Yeah. But it was more of a culture. So a lot of the Palestinians, Christian that you meet, it is a cultural thing for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No real understanding of a personal relationship with Christ.
Right.
Yeah, I grew up as Roman Catholic, and that was very similar for us. So you're graduate from high school in Kuwait.
Yeah.
What happened then? I mean, you ended up in the U.S., obviously. You're here now. So how did that happen?
I came into Toledo, Ohio to study engineering. Mm-hmm. And because both my brothers were engineers, they studied in England and in Detroit. So it was my turn to go to college. So I came to Toledo, Ohio to study. And people say, why Toledo? I go, because you Christians, you come to Israel, look at things, go, holy Toledo. So nothing holy there. So I went to Toledo and I started studying as an engineer, and then my dad lost his work in Kuwait. And in Kuwait, your employer has your passport and your residency. Mm-hmm. So the minute he's done with you, you have to leave the country. Mm-hmm. So Dad had to leave, and I was in Ohio at the time. So I asked him to come in, and they moved with me, and it was cold for them. Yeah, going from the desert to Ohio. So we had an aunt that lived in Huntington Beach, so we decided to move with her for a while, and then from there.
So that's how you ended up in California.
Ended up in California, and I love it.
Yeah, but then, so when you came to Ohio, when you went to university, studied engineering. Your cultural Christianity, your Greek Orthodoxy or whatever, how did that play into your life at that time? Was it a factor, or was it just kind of a personal thing? Or
my parents never. I always say, like, my parents' mom took me once to a church, a Greek Orthodox church, and I was young, and the priest has a long beard, and you have to kiss his hand on the cross. I go, it messed me up till this day. I can't watch Duck Dynasty without going Father Sai. Forgive me, my son. But it was just a cultural thing. It was like, this is who we are. This is who we are. So it didn't play a role. I actually, when I got to Toledo, about a year and a half later, I started working. I needed to work because my dad he didn't have the work. So I started selling bait and tackle, and then I owned a bait fish, and then I became the second fastest fish cleaner in the United States with an electric knife, walleye fishing. And then I had a hard time for people to come and and would it work for me because they were all like drug addicts and that. So I started, I said, hey, listen, if you work for me, by the end of the week, we're going to have cocaine and beer for you. That's how I'm going to pay you. I go, I'll give you the money to buy your drugs, but work for. So I started getting into cocaine and into drinking and all that. And then when I moved to California, I thought, within a few weeks, I found the people.
Yeah, they're not hard to find.
They're not hard to find.
Here in California.
And I moved to California. My mom wanted me to have a day job.
Yeah.
And I remember when my dad was a jeweler, he came to Kuwait, he wanted to do jewelry, to be a jeweler, but mom said, no, we need the security of a job. So my mom said, you need to get a job. So at the time, I changed from engineering to accounting. So I finished accounting here in California and worked for a big tax restaurant company. But at the time, all my friends on the weekends were drugs and drinking and all that.
Okay, all right. We're going to pick up that story in a few minutes.
Okay.
But okay, so I want to fast forward, then we'll go back. But so you've got your history there in the Middle East. So we have, of course, had a massive influx of Middle Easterners as a result of all the crazy stuff that's gone on, in that region, through ISIS and all of that sort of thing. We had the big refugee issue here, not just here, around the world, right? Europe in particular, but here, there's a big controversy about refugees coming in, all the politics surrounding that. But you and some of your friends, you had a real heart for refugees, and so you guys decided to do something about the refugees and see what you could do to help. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, what happened is, I was doing an event as a comedian for an organization called Access California, and they were helping the refugees that were coming. But when I did their banquet, I noticed they were underlying an Islamic agenda for the refugees. And if you were a Christian refugee, you didn't get a lot of attention. So I decided, in fact, we were at a Bible study here. Me and Susan Owais, who's an Iraqi Christian, and Zach Owais, who's a Jordanian. We were at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. When we started, we said, you know what, we speak Arabic. We're finding all these American Christians that want to reach out to the Muslim refugees, but they don't even speak the language. I said, what are we doing? So we prayed about it, and we started just from our, the house garage to get furniture and just hand it to them. And then we started an ESL class just to help the refugees, and then we got a storage place, and before you know it, God just blessed it.
Yeah.
And we started I told my staff right now, we're up to like 5 or 6 full-time employees, 3 part-time, and 20 volunteers every day, and we served over 1,500 Muslim refugee families and others, Yazidis, and but the whole idea was like, it was the best time to reach a Muslim refugee is because they are outside of their element, where it prevent them from even thinking about changing their faith. Plus, they're coming to a time where they're very angry at their own sect, at own group, at own, if they're a Sunni, they're mad at the Shiite, if they're Shiite. So they're coming here and like, okay, I'm done with religion. What's out there for me, and if I accept Christ, which we show them the love of Jesus without, we first love on them, give them furniture, help them with jobs, get them to learn English and all that. But in the process, we show the love of Jesus. And I told my staff, don't preach to them because they're going to ask you the question, and they always do. Why are you doing this? And that's when you share Jesus with them. And we've been very successful. People say, what's your success rate? I go 100%, because the Holy Spirit's job to take care of that. We give them the gospel. We have a more. So I truly believe the best time to reach someone is when they're outside of their element. And we don't decide who brings them here, who comes here. We're not the government. We just, when they're here, we show them love.
So I visited the Voice of the Refugees. Voice of the
Refugees.
Yeah. And walked through and kind of saw the whole program. It was absolutely amazing. I was so impressed with what you guys are doing there. And I'm just not remembering exactly. So how do they end up with you guys? They come in. These are all people who are coming in through the process that the
Right.
government has set up, right? And then how do they end up with whoever they end up with? Many of them end up being connected with you guys. How did that happen?
It started with families that came to us in the beginning, and we started loving on them.
Yeah.
And they started calling oh, my brother is coming from Iraq with his family. Can you guys go pick him up from the airport? Which we do, and then bring him to VOR. And then I was in Israel and Jordan a month and a half ago. And when I got to Jordan, the refugees, we went to a refugee church, and we were giving them, they know Voice of Refugees. They know our Fadi, who's the guy that picks them up. They know about us, and they said, when we get to the California, we're going to come to you guys. It's just the love of Jesus, the favor. And we don't get any government help or anything that we don't advertise, but God just showed us favor, and now they come and asking for us.
Yes. So how many refugees have come through over the past few years?
1,500 families.
1,500
in the last
families.
9 years.
Amazing.
We've been around for 9 years.
9 years.
And
Wow.
thanks to Calvary Costa Mesa, you guys have been helping and supporting and all that. So it really helps, because we don't get government. I don't want, they told me, we can apply for grants. I said, listen, we're going to be able to share Jesus with them.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that will stop us from doing that, we don't want it.
Yeah. Right.
So that's why we don't get.
So in the 9 years and 1,500 families, have you actually seen some people come to faith in Christ?
We do, and we just some verbally say it. Muslims are. You remember, when you are soaked with your religion for so long, and you come here, it takes a while. A lot of them they dream dreams, and they come and share. I dreamt, I saw Jesus in my dream.
Yeah.
And we give them a Bible. We gave them the Jesus film. We answered the questions. Some of them took their scarves off, the hijabs and all that. But others just start asking questions. And from the way they ask the question, you can tell the language changes. It becomes the Lord. The Lord, I want to know what Jesus, instead of saying, oh, Jesus is a prophet, they're like, what do you think? What would Jesus do? So you can tell, but it's very difficult, And it's not our job to convert completely. Our job is to water, and God will get the increase from that.
Yeah, that's great. That's amazing. Well, that's a fantastic work, and I'm really thankful for what you guys do, and I'm thankful for the relationship. I feel like there is a connection, obviously, between our church and you guys, and you're all part of our.
We're all of us are part of the church.
So. Yeah. Okay, so I want to go back. We're going to go back in time now to you. Come from Ohio. I didn't know you were like the fastest fish cleaner.
Second fastest fish cleaner with an electric knife. And now I don't know how I can do it. But you bring me 7 walleyes, I can clean them in a minute. But that was the way it's to.
Now, is there such a thing? Is there like a record? Who was number one?
The guy that worked for me. His name is Jeff, and he's probably overdosed by now or something. But and the reason I started learning, because he would be drugged out in his trailer home in my store's backyard, and I had to clean it because people were waiting. So I started doing it myself.
So I assume this was on a lake, right?
Yes, Lake Erie.
Lake Erie.
Yeah, Port Clinton.
Okay, my goodness.
Yeah, so Middle Eastern clean fish and so.
That's great. Okay. So then you come to California. You get connected with your party people. How did you actually come to meet Christ personally?
Well, K-Wave were doing like a contest. If you're the 7th caller, you can become a Christian. And I was caller number 7. No. Actually, when I came to California and I started working for an accounting firm, and actually I worked for Subway. I also worked for Fritz. I was doing 3 jobs, 7 days a week for 3 years, because I didn't believe. I came to this country to contribute, not to take from the, so I never believed in welfare, even though it's great for people for certain time. But I never wanted to use any assistance, so I worked 7 days a week to take care of my mom and dad. And so I was doing that, and then one time I decided I want to run the marathon. I don't know why it hit me. So I started, I said, I can run 2 miles because I got to smoke a cigarette in between. So I started running 2 miles, and then I said, okay, I'm going to go do the Los Angeles Marathon. So I get to Los Angeles, I sign up, and they said, oh, there's a carbo load, you have to come to it the night before. So I went, and Muhammad Ali, the boxer, was sitting at my table, and he's like, you're going to finish it, right? I go, yes. And I don't know why. I said, oh, I promised Muhammad Ali I'm going to finish the race. So I ran 2 miles. I couldn't smoke because everybody was running. And I ran 4 and 5. I got to 10. I almost died. And then people say, oh, it's downhill. So I get to the 23rd mile, and a homeless lady, she goes, honey, you can't quit. So I finished it. And when I finished it, I was sitting there going, what do I want to do in life that if I never get paid for it, I'll do it to the best of my ability, because I felt I can do anything at that point.
Yeah.
And it was comedy. I said, I want to make people laugh. Yeah. So the next day I went to the LA Cabaret in Encino, signed up at 7 p.m., 300 people in the audience. By midnight when I went on stage, there were 9 drunks. 2 of them fell off their chair laughing. I said, I can do this. And the next day I went and Comedy Store. After that, I did something with Chris Rock and what's his name, Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston's husband. He was in the audience. He's like, you're the funniest guy I've ever seen in my life. So I'm like, okay, this is good. Mm-hmm. And then I worked and Adam Sandler and Kevin James, all these guys. So I started picking up fast. I got management the first year as a comedian. And I started touring the country. And then and my manager at the time, he said, NBC is looking to do something with you. It's called Fish Out of Water, a Middle Eastern Man in America. Mm-hmm. So that would be a great sitcom to do. And I was like, you go on stage and you have a project coming. Yeah. The drugs are free, the alcohol is free, and everything you need is free. Yeah. So I was like enjoying the life, but I was empty inside. There was something like, is this everything that is to it? I'm like, everything I wanted is coming towards me, and there's nothing. So I was at the Pasadena Ice House Comedy Club. I finished my show. This Japanese comic goes up, finished the show. I said, hey, can I buy a drink? He goes, no, I don't drink. I said, do you need a cigarette? He goes, no. He goes, would you come to church with me? I go, of course, I'm a Christian. Where are the original? I used to fight with people in Kuwait because I'm a Christian. He goes, well, come to church with me. So we went to a Southern Baptist church in, I think, in La Habra. Uh-huh. And I'm looking at it, it's just a building with nothing. I think, you guys need a gay interior designer who's Catholic to really design this place for you. And he goes, it's not about the church. And the pastor was preaching on tithing. Yeah. And my friend goes, I'm so sorry, brought you to the wrong service. And no. I said, I love what he's doing. He said, it's his last week, he's moving to Tustin to church on Red Hill. Mm-hmm. Next week, I went to church on Red Hill in Tustin. I walked into the church. I had long hair back then. And the usher would not let me in. The guy, he goes, no, you can't come in with this hair. You need to put it behind your shirt.
Is that right?
Yes. I go, that's 1992, 93. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. He goes, well, why don't you sit here with the ushers and in the back? So we don't. I said, fine. So I sat there. And when the pastor gave the invitation, I ran forward crying, just tears coming. Like, this is exactly what I was looking for.
Amazing.
And I accepted Christ, I was baptized, and I called my manager, and I heard 200 F words from him, because I said, I'm quitting everything. He goes, we got NBC's doing it. Nope, I'm done, I'm not gonna do comedy anymore. I quit. And so the pastor of the church said, Nazareth, can we do something at the church? 1993, he wants to do comedy at a Southern Baptist church. I said, it doesn't work. He goes, yeah, why not? So we had the coffee house set up for 100 people. We had 400 people show up uninvited. And an old deacon who's with the Lord right now, he said, Lord, use this man for your glory. And that's when I felt, okay, I'm going to do this for God. And, and that's when I felt my calling is I'm an evangelist.
Yeah. Okay, so here you are, you listen to this Japanese guy who's doing a comedy routine. He comes down, he doesn't want to drink, he doesn't want to smoke, he wants to take you to church. Was anything going on internally prior to that?
Yes.
Okay.
I was looking, I went to, in Santa Ana, there was one of those Scientology meetings, and they wanted me to put me in a sauna and heat me up, and I didn't buy it. I was just kind of knowing if that's all to everything I want, the fame and that, I wanted that. Mm-hmm. And is that everything to it? Mm-hmm. And there was this emptiness inside that I was seeking. So when you say you want to go to church, I'll go to church.
So, but did you ever think that Jesus was the answer with the emptiness there and all that?
No.
Did that never crossed your mind? Yeah.
No, it never crossed. I just knew that's not everything I was looking for, seeking. Yeah. Wasn't.
So when you go to the Southern Baptist thing in La Habra and the guy is talking about tithing, what made you want to go to the following week?
His authority. Uh-huh. The way that he had authority over the people, and people were listening. I go, wow, this guy had power. And I hate to say this, he was my first pastor, and and he fell big time, and the guy that was my accountability pastor had an affair. So that's what really made me I've been a believer for 26 years, never looked back, never backslidden, praise God, but because I knew I never trust myself.
Yeah.
I never trust myself.
Yeah.
Don't trust me with alcohol, don't trust me with drugs, don't trust me with girls, don't trust me with anything.
Yeah.
I never trust myself.
Yeah, that's wise, because remember Paul says, take heed, for if anyone thinks they stand, beware lest they fall.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we've all got to live that way. Okay, your story is so amazing. It's so fascinating. I want you to talk, just tell us a little bit about your wife. You got a beautiful wife, beautiful children. The story about how you met your wife is just too good to pass up. So I want you to just tell us about that.
Well, when I accepted Christ, I was single.
Yeah.
And I said, Lord, you know what? You know more girls than I do. And I'm going to trust you to find me a wife. If you want me married, which I have the desire, I promise you, I'm not going to watch pornography. I'm not going to date. I'm not going to touch a woman. I'm not going to be alone. I remember I came from living being in Hollywood, and the lifestyle of Hollywood, the girls and all that, and the drinking, to a point where I became a virgin again. I said, I'm going to be a virgin. I'm going to be a clean, no touching, not even kissing, not holding with anybody. I'm just going to wait on you, Lord. But I want a beautiful wife with a rich father that knows the whole Bible. That was my commitment. And I prayed, and the first years that nothing happening, you start compromising. Okay, she doesn't have to have a rich father. You'll take care of us. Beautiful. And the New Testament is fine with me. Another year, I'm losing hair. I'm like, okay, she doesn't have to be beautiful, just okay. And the book of John is fine with me. And then the last year, I was gaining weight. I was like, okay, Lord, you know what? John 3:16, bring her over. I'll witness to her. And that was just, I was just waiting and started to say, am I being too much? Is my standard too high? Yeah. And then in 1995, my father was dying at Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach, and he asked me to go to Israel to finish some paperwork for he had a home there. I said, I'll go to Israel. He goes, no, it's in the Gaza Strip. I said, no, I'm not. The Hamas people, death to America, and they're wearing a Nike shirt. Separation of church and state. But I did. And when he died, I flew into Tel Aviv, and then I drove to the Gaza Strip. And that night, I'm sitting with my cousin, who's an atheist from Baltimore, his fiance and her sister. And he asked me, he said, why are you happy? What's wrong with you? You're in Gaza. There's nothing pleasant there. Yeah. I said, you know what? Jesus Christ changed my life. He gave me a new heart. I used to be, it's all about Nazareth. It was all about me. And I said, God took my heart of stone, gave me a heart of flesh to care about others. And I told him, I said, I used to be like an old car that keeps breaking down, but now that I'm a Christian, I'm that same old car, but I'm married to a mechanic and I have AAA. That was my God. It wasn't about things are getting better, but that was happened. So he got mad and he goes, girls, don't listen to him. He's a born again Christian. And that's when her sister said, me too. And I looked at her, and she's a beautiful woman. I said, would you like to marry me? It just came out of my mouth. And she looks at me, and she was serious. She goes, I've been praying for a believer to come to this side of the world. Let me pray and fast for 3 days. I'll get back to you. And she was praying for 3 years as well.
Did she live in Gaza?
She lived in Gaza.
Yeah.
And she went to school to University of Bethlehem, but she lived in Gaza. So 3 days later, she came back. She goes, I'm starving. Let's do it. We got engaged. Within 5 days, we were engaged. And then I came back to the States a year later, went back, we got married. Yeah. And we've been married 21 years.
21 years, amazing.
God just honored it by giving me a beautiful, I'm talking the beauty, and I love her inside. She's much more beautiful inside than she's outside. But God just, blessed me.
Yeah. Amazing. And how many children do you have?
I have 3. John is at Biola University doing film school. Carol's 17. And Tally, which is Hebrew for oops, is 10.
She's got the comedian gene.
Yes, yeah. And she's like blonde with blue eyes. And at the mall, they think I kidnapped her or something. But she's the one at the banquet.
Okay, two more things really quick.
Yes.
Talk about Israel for a moment. As you, a Palestinian, that's your world, that's your background. Obviously, there's always sort of tension, between Israelis and Palestinians. I've been to Israel many times,
Right.
as you have, and so forth. And some people would not even. Some people would be bothered that you even referred to Israel, right? Some people would think, well,
Oh, yes.
you should,
Oh, yes.
you should not
Yeah.
use that term. This is Palestine. How have you changed through your relationship with Christ? Did your attitude toward Israel change as a result of your
Of course.
relationship with the Lord?
Of course. The minute I became a Christian and I started to know more about Jesus, about the Lord, about the history of the land, and it was very clear to me that this land belongs to the Jews. Now I might disagree with the way the government decisions sometimes, but I always share the story of what if the power that Israel have now was in the Palestinian side or the Arab side? What would happen to the Jews? And I understand. I go to Israel, was just in Israel. I have love for, when you come to know Christ as Lord and Savior, you don't hate anybody else.
Yeah.
There's no hate anymore. So that was taken out. So I love the Jews. I actually led 2 Israelis to Christ, which is one of the great things. I'm going to get to heaven and go, okay, God, 2. Amen. So that's what it is. And I love the Palestinians as well. And being a Palestinian, Middle Eastern, and born-again Christian, that's 3 reasons for people to hate you automatically. and for many years at the church, even at Costa Mesa, I used to come here and people go, oh, you're Jewish, we love you. I go, I'm actually Palestinian. Ew, I'm serious. I go, wait, I'm your brother in the Lord. I'm much closer to you. But we, both people.
Yeah.
I used to tour with a Jewish rabbi, a tour called One Arab, One Jew, One Stage. And I was hoping at the time that, the young generation of Israelis and Palestinians would come together. And I really I used to think there's hope, but the hope comes through the Prince of Peace himself.
Yeah.
And until he comes back, there's going to be that conflict. But I want to encourage anyone who's listening, who's either a Palestinian or Israeli, that hate is not going to get you anywhere. It's just show love. Love the individual. You don't have to love what the policies are, but you love the individuals and you love their people.
Yeah.
People are people,
Yeah,
regardless of who they are.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, last thing. So you have just written a book.
Yes, actually, I wrote it last year, and it will be published in the next few days. It should be out by now, but it's called Hope in 24 Hours, and I know being anxious is a sin. So Paul, be anxious for nothing, but everything in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, make your request known unto the Lord, and the peace of God that which surpasses all understanding will guard your heart and mind. And I find out that a lot of Christians have lost their hope in God's ability to change their situation. And for me, I had so many stories, like when I met my wife. One day I was single, 24 hours later, I'm planning a wedding. It wasn't in my mind. It wasn't something, like I was like, oh, okay, I'm getting old. Am I going to find a wife? Is this something? Do I want to wait on the Lord to get me a wife? Or should I take action? But God took care of that. In 24 hours, I was planning a wedding. Same thing at one time when the economy hit, Bank of America wasn't accepting 90% of the mortgage from me, so they kept charging payments. I got to a point where it was like $70,000 in debt. I was like, Lord, what do I do? And I was losing sleep, not knowing that God's thoughts are different than ours and His plans are different. And the next day I had a friend call me. He goes, how you doing? I go, I'm doing great. They go, you're lying. You're not doing great. I go, no, I'm doing okay. They go, okay, you don't have to tell me, but God nudged me to send you something tomorrow. There's a FedEx coming your way. And I thought it was like $500. It was $100,000. I paid the mortgage up to date. I'm still in this home, 12, and I paid my car off, and in 24 hours my situation would change. Now this is not name it and claim it. I just want to encourage the readers to know that you know what, God can, if that's His will, He can change. So put that extra instead of like, okay, it's gonna get this, I'm gonna get worse, I'm gonna get the chemo, and then I'm gonna die. Just put there's a chance there God can reverse the process or change something.
Yeah. So what's it called again?
It's called Hope in 24 Hours.
Hope in 24 Hours. Okay. It'll Amazon.
It's in Amazon, or you can go to NazarethUSA.com and order it.
Nazareth, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And I love this story. I think it's going to be a blessing to many. And so We'll have to do it again sometime. And sometime we'll just sit here and you can just crack jokes and just make us all laugh.
Yes, people don't
you're
even
good
need
at
to know.
that.
I'm a full-time comedian. I never make a penny from Voice of Refugees or any other ministry that I'm involved. My money comes from doing comedy, stand-up comedy. And thank you for being my pastor for so many years now.
You're welcome. All right.
You're
God
welcome.
bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the interview today with Nazareth. And follow up, I think his book is just going to be tremendous. I actually can't wait to read it. Again, thanks for being with us today, and we'll look forward to being with you again next time. God bless. On this episode of Things That Matter, I interview my friend Nazareth, and he has an amazing story, and I know you are going to love it. And so stay tuned.